Sometimes art has a prophetic power to it in that it can predict the future. Giants and Toys, besides being a really powerful commentary on contemporary corporate culture in Japan, seems to have read the future, giving us a picture of what was going to happen over the next 50 years. Giants and Toys was made in 1958, so it's 49 years old. That was only 7 years after the end of the occupation, after World War II. And already in 58, corporate culture in Japan seemed to have been solidified to the point that Masumura could make a movie criticizing it and giving us an idea of where it would head in the future. And that's what Giants and Toys does for us, is it gives us an idea of where corporate culture in Japan is going to go in the next few decades.
宇宙服いいアイデアだね。
One of Masumura's main themes in this movie, one of the things that he tries to convey to the viewer, is that corporate culture in Japan, especially that of the 1950s, treated people not as people but as commodities. Not only was the culture of corporate Japan driven by commodities and making money, but in the meantime, somehow human beings got lost in the process. The first couple of clips are from the opening credits of the movie, and from the very beginning of this movie, Masumura gives us the idea that human beings are products. The main female character of the movie, Kyoko, who is mass-produced, almost in a Warhol-type manner, mass-produced. And following that, we'll see the main male character of the movie showing up in a suit in a mass of businessmen on his way to work. After we see the main male character of the movie, Nishi, coming to work in a mass of businessmen, Masumura cuts to the president of the company in his office, overlooking this mass of people. And very ironically, he says that they all must be buying caramels because World Candy Company sells caramels. And he says, when I look at them, they all look like caramels. And this is one of the themes that Masumura comes back to again and again in the movie, that people are not people. They're not viewed as human beings by these corporate raiders of the post-war economy in Japan. By the end of the movie, Nishi, the new young member of the company, has been completely disillusioned by the corporate culture that he thought he was going to become a part of. And we see him arguing with his boss, Goda, about being human or not being human. And he says, I'm going to be a human. I'm not going to live like you and become non-human and treat people as non-humans. Goda retorts by saying, don't blame me, blame Japan. It's Japan's fault. This is the way we are in Japan. He says, if you'd like to go find some wonderland, in the subtitles it says wonderland. In the Japanese it actually says Aoi o shita ningyo no kuni, the country of blue-eyed dolls. I think he's referring to America, I don't know. But Nishi rejects the basic tenets of the predatory corporate culture that Goda represents at the very end of the movie. Masumura has filled Giants and Toys with all sorts of ironies. One of the most obvious being that Kyoko, the poster girl for the new candy ad campaign, has horrible teeth and acts like a weirdo at every turn. Another really interesting scene in the movie that exhibits pretty powerful irony is toward the end there's a board meeting shortly after World Candy Company's chief competitor, Apollo, has had a fire at their factory and are out of commission. World decides to pounce on Apollo and to steal their share of the market. Goda, the rapacious corporate climber, is in the meeting with his father-in-law, who also happens to be his boss, the head of advertising, and is trying to promote this overtaking of Apollo and stealing of their market share. His father-in-law, representing the old guard, stands up and tries to persuade everybody to perhaps be a bit more gentlemanly about it and not try to drive Apollo into the ground. And we have this very interesting scene where the older boss tries to summon some sort of sense of decency by mentioning samurai, the traditional warriors of Japan, and talking about the Bushido spirit. Goda flatly rejects this and says that it's absolute nonsense, and talks about how people simply don't think, and why should we be gentlemanly about anything. The irony is that Goda is rejecting the same kind of values that at the time Japanese corporate culture was adopting, the values of the warrior and the samurai, and the honor and work ethic of the samurai. The final scene is full of irony, and you'll have to decide for yourself what kind of a decision Nishi made, whether he gave in, whether he overcame the corporate culture, or whether it's something more complicated than that. Masamura has given us a very complex view of the way Japanese were becoming in the 50s and 60s, the type of culture that the Japanese were buying into, and continues to this day. Corporate culture is still one of the hallmarks of Japan, and something that they are both very proud of, as well as a little bit embarrassed of at times, that Japan is known mostly for its corporate culture, for its products, and for the salaryman, the sarariman, that seems to define Japan today.